because I think, tour managers or, booking agents and artists recognize Omaha as being a place that has an appetite for culture. And I don't think that was true until pretty recently.
I think just what I've noticed, again, being the outsider in, Minneapolis is known to be basically, it has a scene, but man, do people get snotty there. It's just kind of, I'm from there, so I'll totally admit it. It's like, oh, we call it, you're Ubersteinster and that kind of stuff, and that it becomes one of those things you kind of throw on almost pride. What I love about the scene here is that it's accessible. I get on an email and I send an email out, and I've got reps from one of the major indie labels here, one of the nationally recognized independent film houses here, and the list goes on and on. Think about what we've done all semester, and it's that fast. And I think Omaha develops a unique experience that way that I don't think you get. Even like Minneapolis, St. Paul, Chicago, definitely. East Coast, West Coast, like you were saying. I mean, it's very accessible. Almost, you don't even recognize it's there until you're inside and go, oh my God, this is going on. So I think that's cool. Two questions have come up on the screen here quick. I'm just going to make sure there's no hands up. One, is indie moving faster than the studios to the future? So is indie kind of at the front, at kind of, the front of that? And the second question is Omaha an isolated town to the point that if an artist wants to break out nationally, they can't do it? So because it's so isolated. So those are two very different questions, but I'll let you, kind of wrestle with those.
Well, I absolutely, Ryan and I looked at each other and nodded. Yeah, I mean, and that it has been true for a long time that the independent artists are the ones who are doing the innovative stuff, who are doing the artistically interesting stuff. And, it's interesting because what happens is there's been this back and forth between the studios and the independent filmmakers since, the ultimate was in the 70s when things had changed culturally so much that the old white dudes who were the studio heads had no clue about what was going on with the younger generations, and so they just had to give complete artistic freedom to Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola and all of these guys who are huge directors now, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, who were kids then, making crazy stuff, stuff that they thought was really out there. And that was the only way that they could make a decent movie because the studios had no clue what people wanted anymore. And that dynamic shifts back and forth all the time. But what you'll see, like with the films that we try to play, is that they're really doing something different. It'll be a different narrative style a lot of the time. It'll be, coming from a different perspective, and it'll feel new. I mean, that's kind of what's significant about it because the studios have to play it safe. They got to go by a formula and they got to go by a book.
Yeah. Two things about that. One, I think it's because the independent creators and the independent, groups have more freedom to do what they need to do because they're not tied down by the money because they can just go there and do that. So of course they're ahead. That's part of the nature of it. And part of it ties into finding the new media and embracing it, finding those new avenues and embracing it, which allows them to get out ahead. But I do totally agree with you that it's like cyclical and that it's going to catch up again. And I think we're actually at that point right now where I feel like movies have gotten as big and as fat and as obnoxious as they possibly can. And, I really mean that. Like, they're just huge and disgusting now. And I feel like it's about to double back on itself because I feel like, if you look at the box office returns from this year in particular, they're nothing but sequels and things like that, and they're not doing as well as they thought they would.
Yeah.
And they're failing at such a high rate, and the only thing that speaks to a studio is returns. And when they sit there and they look and they see those returns diminishing and they know that they can't keep up with what they've done before, that's when they let the new artists take a shot at it because they're out of options. And I feel like we're almost at the point now where we're going to see another boom in that.
Well, I really liked...
How do you feel about that, Ryan?
I don't like don't like them at all.
I was thinking of two movies when you were talking about that. Actually, first I was thinking Blair Witch, but I was thinking Paranormal Activity and Insidious. So there are two horror movies, and I'm a horror movie buff, so those were the two movies that I saw. Paranormal Activity was made for it was definitely under $1 million. Right. It might have even been under $500,000.
But they had some support for some people. I mean, even in the creation of the movie itself, they had some big name people who came in and kind of worked with them. So
wasn't that after they produced the film?
kind of, they changed the ending and things like it just
Right.
yeah, it was a micro budget.
I guess my point is when you can make a film for less than $1 million, which is kind of almost unheard of now, you can make such big returns on that investment. Insidious was made from the guy who did Saw, and the producer of Paranormal Activity, I believe, James Wan for Saw, and I don't forget who the Paranormal Activity producer was, but they made it for like $1.5 million, and it's made $35 million already, and which isn't that much, comparatively to an Avatar, which makes 1 point whatever billion, and then but it's still relatively like from $1 invested to $1 return. It's incredible how much money that makes.
Well, what's funny about it is the studios continue to forget that if you make good movies, people will see them, no matter how weird or out there they are. And the classic reminder of that I think people were really served with last year was Black Swan, which was a movie that is very independently based, that was a horror movie about ballet, and it made $100 million because it was good, And if you market and you put out a film that is good and quality, it's fun to be a champion of the small things, but if you really do put it out, and then you give it the kind of marketing boost a good film that it deserves, it's going to do a ton of money, It really is.
Well, even after the fact, because and I always bring up like Fight Club and I guess in Big Lebowski too, because it doesn't have to just do really well at the box office. It can do really well after it's out of the box office and on DVD and become a cult classic, I guess if you want to use that term. But Fight Club tanked at the box office, and now it's considered like one of the best films of the 90s, I think. So.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. My personal one is, how do we explain the remakes? How do we explain the fact that, they're taking things like A-Team, which was this, this child of the 80s, and try and make it into a movie that just did horrible, and the remaking of movies over and over again?
It's two things. Number one, it's what's considered a safe bet for the studio. There's a built-in audience. There's built-in familiarity. You can lower your marketing costs and lower your marketing impressions because you know that people are already familiar with it. So
same with comic books, same with sequels.
Anything that's based on existing properties is popular because of that. It's also better because it's quicker. You have something on which to base it. You're writing. You know what you're getting involved in. It's less experimental, and so it's an easy way for them to turn that in there. But what I would point to, the best example if you're talking about big studio pictures of taking a good risk, Inception. And the reason why is it's an original film with an original script that was big budgeted, that was very artistic, and it did a ton of money. I mean, I really believe that there's concepts that will still appeal to people beyond just that stuff. But the reason you see the remakes, it's really easy. I mean, it's because they think they can save money on that stuff because there's a built-in audience for it.
But with Inception, they were banking on Christopher Nolan.
Oh, and Leo, actually.
Yeah,
very much so on the star.
Because it's guaranteed that.
Because I'm just thinking the arc that Christopher Nolan has taken from The Following, even before he did Memento, to Inception and Batman Begins and Dark Knight and becoming this blockbuster director. No one would have guessed 10 years ago that Christopher Nolan and Darren Aronofsky and all these people would have been Oscar-nominated blockbuster directors, I don't think.
Well, I mean, it's the same with that crew I was talking about from the 70s.
Right, exactly.
It's like, and all those guys were the indie film directors of the 90s. Every single guy that was nominated for this year, and the one woman who did a smaller independent, but they were all big 90s indie directors. They had hits at Sundance and stuff. So.
Let's go back to the question about the idea of, is Omaha an isolated town to the point that of an artist? And we can talk film, we can talk music, we can talk whatever the case may be. If an artist wants to break out nationally, they can't do it because of where they are. Are we that isolated or no?
No. I mean, we've had a lot of artists break out of Omaha. And we've had artists that didn't leave Omaha to do it. I mean, I think in the movie industry, it's a little more necessary. I mean, well, Nick's movie was filmed here, though. Nick Fackler, he's a director. He made a movie a few years ago called Lovely Still that got a lot of acclaim, was at a lot of film festivals, had major stars in it.
He made it here.
Yeah, he filmed it here. Saddle Creek was, it's based here. It was built here. Most of the original stable of artists on Saddle Creek are from Omaha. And Bright Eyes, the biggest band on Saddle Creek, is from Omaha and continues to record here and live here some of the time. And, I don't think, Saddle Creek was entirely built in Omaha and remains based in Omaha, and just